So, yeah, if I went to the store and bought that, that would have been much more expensive.
Right.
That's why I'm saying rice wine. It doesn't take 2 years. It tastes really good coming out of it, right out of the fermenter. It's a sweet, light wine. There's no tannins in it, so it doesn't give you the headache. It's just a really nice, pleasant drink. One of the people I'm going to talk about today, her name is Mong Chi. She's a Korean cook, and she has this amazing Korean cooking show on YouTube. She shows how to make makgeolli and mung, which is kind of a Korean rice wine, sake, rice beer, right in that area. They pull it out of the fermenter, water it down by about 50%, because I guess it's coming out like at close to 18% alcohol, so they water it down by half. And it's still as strong as a Chimay beer.
Right.
But it's, even though it's pretty alcoholic, it still has a very delicate.
It's because
really
you're source.
Delicious thing to make. You go to any Asian grocery store, any of those Asian markets, they have these little balls, little koji balls. You just smoosh them up in a pestle and just eat them with this rolling pin or whatever. Add that to cool cooked rice, which then you drop that in the fermenter for 3 weeks. And off of 4 cups of rice, you can get a quart or 2.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good, yeah.
It's my favorite because it's just delicious, and it's easy, and it's during the pandemic, like so many of us did. I explored a whole new host of hobbies. Yeah, I think everyone in America, probably whole globally, I'm not going to be an American chauvinist, but I imagine a lot of us did that.
Yeah, I think sourdough was the top list.
Oh my gosh. How much bread did everybody make?
I didn't make any.
I quit buying bread. I just made all my own bread.
Since I keto, I don't make bread. Well, I do make my own keto breads. That's it. That's it. So.
I found this recipe on YouTube from Frugal Fit Mom, and it's one of those ones where you mix up and let it set overnight, so you don't really have to knead it.
Right.
Just let the microwaves do the work.
Yeah. I'm
And
sure it was good.
And it's like, 50 cents a loaf.
Yeah.
A lot of that I look at like, well, I'm going to put all this labor into it. Is it worth it? And you think like, well, it's $4 a loaf at the store.
Right.
Something that's got a bunch of stuff in it. This has flour, salt, yeast, water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And just letting it sit most of
Just
the time.
letting it sit.
Most of the time is leaving stuff alone.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that was something I had to work with. I'm not the most patient person. So.
Well, it's
just
any of these things of that. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, that's a lot of work. No, it's a lot of. There's some prep, but it's a lot of waiting.
Yeah, it's a lot of
waiting.
Not work.
Right.
And that may be harder for a lot of us than work.
Exactly.
Hey, everybody. It's about 5 after the hour. Folks come in. We'll let them as they arrive. Hold that door closed. Keep our secret cabal. So in week 1 of our YouTube classes, we talked about the basics of YouTube and how to use YouTube and a little bit about its background and history, how it's this giant search engine that 2 billion people are using a month. It's sort of incredible. And then last week I talked about how to create a channel, some things to think about, how to actually go through the mechanics of creating your channel, and then some examples of people who have done that and some of the successes. Today, we're going to talk particularly about monetization of those channels. Okay, so this one is going to be more informationally dense than the last one because there is sort of a hierarchy of compliance through YouTube. And that's because there are 2 main factors that come into that. Let's say 3. Google owns YouTube, so you have to adhere to all the Google policies and compliance. Then the YouTube community has its own standards of policy and compliance. It's not going to help in here because it's just going to go for the stream, the microphone. But you can't hear anybody. I tested this last week because everybody would ask questions and then I would answer, and all you would hear is the answer. So if you do have a question today, I'm going to try and repeat it so that the folks who are watching the stream can understand what that was rather than just hearing a completely out of the blue answer. What we're going to do today then is go over the requirements that need to be met to receive compensation for your YouTube channel. How many hours of viewership, how many subscribers, and then talk a little bit about each of those levels of compliance. And thankfully, most of them are similar, and most of them are just good sense. It's like, you know, you can't, for instance, show stuff that's illegal. That makes sense, right? A lot of times, and you will see this as people editorialize on their channels, they get very upset with YouTube because those rules are in flux. And on the page, and I'm going to show you this here in a moment, on the page they show the dates where they have updated or changed policy. And people, creators, sometimes get rather upset about what seems sometimes to be an arbitrary change. But I think, stepping back from that for a moment, YouTube is a for-profit concern. They are, 100% based on ad revenue or premium customers. But in generally, they're making their money from ad revenue. So they want to appeal to the broadest cross-section that they can. And so there are several things in there that, and I don't want to get into that whole space because people will have opinions, but there are some things on their standards that they ask you to comply with that in some cases, some people feel impinges on their free speech, okay? Like any other company though, if you were producing content for CBS or you were producing content for CNN, they're going to have a policy of what is acceptable because they're also trying to make money. This is, if you keep that in mind, okay, I can work within these parameters, okay? Let me take a seat and we're going to walk through some of these policy pages today. If you see anything that's interesting to you, grab my email or leave your email and tell me and I will send you these links, okay? All right. So, first thing we're going to talk about, can you guys see that in the back? Do I need to make that any bigger? Is that a little bit bigger? You bet. Maybe. How about there? That work? Okay. These are the ways that you make money in YouTube. Advertising revenue. That's the biggie. And you can get demonetized for a number of reasons. But that's the bread and butter of this whole platform is the advertising revenue. Channel memberships. People pay for certain content, and that's true, across the internet, so that's true in this platform as well. Shopping, how to put your merch on there, how to connect, if you have another blog or another site, how to connect your store to YouTube so it can be seamless, kind of that omni-channel experience, and they can buy your products. Again, I'm going to show you some of these examples of that as we continue. Super chat and super stickers. Now these are very kind of esoteric. I don't see these very often. I don't know I don't have the statistics on how often they're used. Evidently I don't, and I think part of this is because I don't watch kids' YouTube, because I think some of these things might be... Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, that makes sense. And live stream one. They did talk about that, yeah. And super thanks. Okay. Super thanks? Yeah, people can pay for the privilege of having a highlight in your comments. And last one is premium. And in the first week, if you're using YouTube without premium, it's annoying because there's so many ads. When you get a premium account,
it takes all those ads out. So you don't have the, you know, pre-video ad and the middle video ad and the post-video ad. It's just the content. What they do then is if I go to your channel and I'm a premium member, part of my premium membership then pays you, since my view is not going to impact your ad revenue. Okay? There is a concept that you should know. It's called CPM, and it's cost per mil, and that's mil, Latin Roman numeral mil, 1,000. It's cost per 1,000. And different people assess this different ways, but probably a good rule of thumb is that for about every 1,000 views, it's between $3 and $6, roughly. There are some categories of content that are higher, and there are some that might be saturated that are much lower. But rule of thumb, $3 to $6 per 1,000 views. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to assume all those are things provided by.
All these things are provided by YouTube.
What about stuff like where they have to buy my coffee or some of those other ones that aren't out of YouTube? Does YouTube take some of that money? And what about like you post on like Facebook and Patreon or something? Post on YouTube. How's that all that?
So YouTube takes 45% of the revenue that is YouTube money. Shopping is not included in that, and Patreon is a separate service. So that's, and when we get to the chunk that they take, it's good you're all sitting down. Hey, how are you? Come on in, have a seat. They take an amazing chunk of change. So, ad revenue. What do you need to do? AdSense. AdSense is YouTube's ad revenue service, and you have to create an AdSense account that you link to the URL of your channel. Last week, someone asked if you could have multiple channels, and I think I said the wrong thing. I said you could, but you might need to have different emails. It turns out you could have separate channels, and when you create your AdSense account, you can link multiple channels to one AdSense account. So if you had a channel that did something on food, and a channel that did something on video, and a channel that did something on your lifestyle blog, your vlog, all of those could be on one AdSense account, so that all the revenue could then roll into one payment for you. We're gonna go through some of these a little bit, but the progression, you need a Gmail account to create a YouTube account. You have a YouTube account, you can create your YouTube channel. Once you have a channel, you can create your AdSense account. You can create that as soon as you create your channel. However, you're not going to get paid. If your first channel came out and 100,000 people watched it, what'd you get paid? Probably zero. Yeah, there's some kind of wild goose things that might happen that you could make money. But in general, there are some very specific, where did I put that? Some very specific criteria that you have to meet before you can get monetized. Here we go. And these are the general requirements to monetize things, and you will see some of these take a while. So people who've been on YouTube for a gazillion years, which in this case means back to like 2005, they have so much content over such a long period of time, they're in the system. If we create something new, you have to have, what's on here? I'll find it in a minute. You have to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time over the last 12 months. Okay. We talked about this last time also, how there is a drive to create short content, and there is a separate, the YouTube Shorts Fund. They put an astronomical amount of money together to fund short content because advertisers don't want to really advertise on super short things. Mostly for longer content, YouTube is looking for, around 15 minutes because they can put a pre-video ad and kind of a middle video ad, so they can maximize their advertising space. On those short content things, they're not advertising it. When you see TikTok on YouTube, they're not really doing advertisements on that. What they are doing, and people can apply for this short fund, oh, there it is right there, $100 million. They have $1/10 billion sitting around to help you work on your short content. So that's roughly 3 minutes and under, and some of those are less than a minute. If I'm going astray, lead me back to the path. So,
You talked about 1,000 subscribers.
yes, ma'am.
Can it be different channels that you have, or is that each separate channel?
I will have to find the answer to that, but I think it is your amalgam. No, it would be for that channel because it's that video. So even if you had 1,000 subscribers over 3 channels, let's say 333 per, you only got 333 subscribers to the channel that video is being monetized for. So you need 1,000, you need about 1,000 per. And 4,000 hours of watch time, which is, as you will see, that seems like a daunting number. That's 2 work years, right? But that's really not that much when you're talking about 2 billion people being on here.
Videos that would add up fast.
What? Yes, yeah. As they watch your content over, 20 minutes for 1,000 people, 20,000 minutes. So it sounds daunting, but really, that's an average. That's an average over 12 months, though.
That's all. So you get it back up to 4,000.
I would assume that's true, but it's a rolling 12 months, so you would have to have like a significant drop off for you to get cut out.
Okay. So now you can't do just 1 or 2 things and expect it to keep it. You've got to keep it going.
Right, and 1 or 2 things won't really work because the way that YouTube works, again, they're looking for long-term advertising revenue, so they don't want you to do 1 video and yeah, that got 4,000 hours because it was awesome. Right, they want you to do regular postings. That will raise. There's an algorithm on where you are placed in search results and things like that. There's algorithms on where you will get ad revenue. They want regular posting because that helps their business, even if you're happy with that one thing, because that one thing covered it, right? But they really want to see. If you only had 1 video, even if it was watched 4,000 hours, I think it would be tough. I don't know exactly, but I think it would be tough for you to really monetize that because they're looking at content over a year.
Well, but it only makes sense that you would keep it going. You wouldn't have just 1 video.
Right.
You'd have like 1 every day or every.
Right. And actually, exactly, yeah. And as you establish that cadence, it is noted. So if you were doing once every day and then you slow down to once a week and then you slow down to once a month, those sort of things that will affect the accounting. Yeah. So those are the ad things. Those are the general portions of the ad revenues. I have on here the page on how to create your account. I'm not going to step through all of this because, well, that's going to be cumbersome, but also the information is available. And if you've ever dealt with any Google product, however you feel about Google, their documentation is pretty good. So you will be able to find that information. And if you can't, you can always go YouTube search for what you're looking at, because it turns out they have published how to do all of this. And then like another million people have published how to do all of this and how they did it. So there's a lot of information on how to set these things up. Yes, sir. Oh, sure. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah. So go out to Google AdSense, get started, and again, this is simple and it walks you through. It's just a very linear process on how to do that, and then you attach a URL to that AdSense account. Okay? And you can share them. This is what I was talking about. So you can share those between people. So if you've ever worked in a business that had a YouTube presence, you can share admin rights with other people so they can get in and view your AdSense, manage your account. It doesn't have to be all on one individual. You can spread that work out a little bit, and hopefully, if you're doing that, have some more specialized talent doing certain things, but you can share those. Okay. Let's talk. This is the advertiser-friendly content guides. Note these dates up here. These are the last thing. They demonetized everything out of Russia, for instance. So it might not be that something that you think is bad. It might be that they don't want to fund, they don't want to be part of an international controversy, and so they just took all that content off the ad revenue stream. Here are the things that, when they say they're not advertiser friendly, this means it will probably get you demonetized. Inappropriate language, violence, adult content, shocking content, and that nebulous language is what makes people upset, I think. If you ever go out and you find a YouTube video of someone who is complaining about how they got demonetized, it's because there isn't a perfect, there is not a perfect and precise definition, and there are human beings involved in evaluating these things. That's always going to be, was it a ball or a strike? Depends on one guy. Harmful or dangerous acts, hateful and derogatory content, anything really on drugs is going to have a lot of problems. Firearms-related content, although there are certain people who still maintain firearms-related channels, so I'm wondering how they really work their revenue streams. Controversial issues, right? That seems pretty nebulous. What does that mean? Sensitive events. When you hear somebody say something like that, what does that mean? Well, they go through here and they talk about that, but there's sort of a nebulous, well, don't use inappropriate language. Well, that's sort of subjective to the individual. What I think is inappropriate, you may be fine with, and vice versa. Don't have controversial subjects. Well, for me, cheating in chess is a very controversial subject. Maybe a lot of other people, and it's not really. I'm just using that as an example. I got no money in the Grandmaster chess game, but that's very subjective. I think people have some valid criticism in saying this was a major creative effort, or this is my full-time gig. Now you decided what's too controversial. That seems odd, and you'll hear about that. Some things fairly obvious. Don't post adult content on YouTube. That's really not the platform for it. This language, shocking content. It may upset, disgust, or shock viewers. What does that mean? Harmful or dangerous acts. I think most people could come to that. And this is another one that causes problems. Hateful and derogatory content. Some people think they are just not being PC and speaking their minds, why other people would say that is hate speech. And so I think this is a point of controversy. currently on the platform. People have been demonetized. People have been removed from the community. And there is a great deal of controversy around those things. Recreational drugs, that's pretty simple. Firearms related, that's pretty simple. But when we get to something like that may be unsettling, this is controversial and may be unsettling. Look, those Save the Pets that Sarah McLachlan sings to, that unsettles me every single time. You know, you hear Sarah McLachlan in the background, you know, like, I'm about to get bummed out for the rest of the day. But that's okay, right? Probably. Depends on what you go there. Sensitive events. I think this is directly there have been some instances where people who categorize themselves as independent journalists may have been on the scene. This happened at the grocery store, the grocery store mass shooting incident that was in Colorado. There was a man at that grocery store who the first thing he did was pulled out a camera and started recording video. That was not met with a great deal of welcome when he tried to post that material. I mean, that was an active crime in process with a great deal of human suffering attached to it. So we can understand that. Enabling dishonest behavior. There are a lot of things on YouTube that some of us might think are dishonest. There are people talk about, for instance, non-traditional medicine, just as one, or exercise programs, or diet programs that questionable on how honest that is. So one wonders where that line is that you're enabling dishonest behavior. There are a million videos out there telling you how to talk to the police if you get pulled over. Is that enabling behavior? They tell you, there are videos out there on what to do if you've been drinking and you get pulled over. That seems like that's enabling dangerous and irresponsible behavior. Inappropriate content for kids and families. I don't know much about the children's YouTube because I don't watch or contribute to children's YouTube, but there's a whole different standard, as I think most of us would be happy to hear, for producing children's content. If it's in that subcategory, then it has a whole other set of compliance requirements that it needs to follow. But I think, again, most of us would say, well, yeah, I think we have that in common. That, not showing horrible stuff to children, reasonable. Tobacco-related. I didn't know that. Did you guys know that? That if you show tobacco-related stuff, you can get demonetized? Yeah. Incendiary and demeaning. Again, that's kind of a nebulous quantity. Just wanted to show you this real quick. There are skippable video ads, non-skippable ads, bumper ads, and overlay ads. And those are the ones that are in a banner at the bottom. You'll see those sometimes. You can choose which ones you have. If you get into this, well, not if. When you get into this, you will see that there are also a number of rules on how you can place ads. You can't place ads like on the controls. You can't place ads over a certain percentage of the available area of the screen. They want people to be able to tell the difference between an advertisement and your content, and they don't want to make it difficult to use controls on YouTube that would then go to an ad page. And that makes sense too. There are some details around that. Again, I'm going to skirt those today because there are many different details that you'd have to pay attention to, and a lot of that's very technical, and I want this to be kind of a high-level thing. to gear you up for the channel. But when you get to that point, just remember, you can have ads play during your video, but there are rules around how you arrange it, how much space it can take, how close it can be to other things. There's a whole set of rules on it. Can't be deceptive. It can't look like a drop down and actually take you to an advertiser, which back in the day when they first started putting pop-ups and banners and nobody had pop-up blockers on there, there were a lot of ads that did that kind of stuff. Well, they just outlawed that. These are the general Google. So I told you there were hierarchy, and I'm skipping around a little bit, but we're going to talk about the Google ones. And these are general publishing guidelines that Google has. Those that I just showed you were the AdSense ones. The Google publisher ones they have content policies and behavior policies. So the content policies are, you know what, I didn't make that bigger. The content policies are it can't be illegal. It can't be intellectual property abuse. I watch a lot of movie reviews on YouTube. Consistently, movie reviewers will say, I would love to show you that, but the studio will come and demonetize us. And it doesn't have to be a now playing. Toho Studios from Japan, when there's a whole subgenre of Godzilla movie aficionados, Toho evidently goes out there and scrapes and then demonetizes everybody who has got their footage on their channel. So those movies were made in the 50s and 60s. Doesn't matter, still copyrighted. Still you go. Dangerous or derogatory. This is, again, you can see this is very similar to the ones for AdSense. The overarching Google corporate policy is you can't do this kind of stuff. You can't bully. You can't haze. You can't do all of those things that get you hauled up in front of the international court in The Hague. You can't call for those sort of things. Glad to see this. No animal cruelty ones there. So you can't show bullfighting or dog fighting, or rooster fighting, or pandas getting a tooth extraction. I don't know if that one's true, but it seems like that would be pretty cruel because pandas are cute. You can't have misrepresentative content. That one seems to be a point of contention as well, because some people say they are helping you see a side that's not permitted or not popularly shown in mainstream media. Other folks would say, well, that's misinformation. I think there's going to be some question about that. Unreliable and harmful claims. Deceptive practices. And they have kind of they have some rules about what they're talking about there. They don't want you to fish. They don't want you to do get rich quick schemes. But how many times have you looked for how to flip a house, how to start, there are whole presentations on multi-level marketing and some things that, and I'm not suggesting all multi-level marketing is deceptive. I am saying that there are cases that are. So how do they do that? How do they change that? Manipulated media. So deepfake stuff is probably not going to be monetized if you use deepfake stuff to make a clearly misrepresented point. Enabling dishonest behavior. This is the same as the one for the AdSense. I give some great examples there. And finally, miscellaneous or unwanted software. Thank you. Not miscellaneous. Tag me up. Don't leave me hanging. Yeah, malicious software. So you can't put a lot of malware and have that come through your videos. And who would want that anyway? Last one's sexually explicit. I think that's the last one. Yeah, all the stuff that's sexually explicit. This isn't the platform for that. This is, how to play guitar. Specifically, no mail order brides. That's good. The rest of these are more about adult content and child exploitation and the things that hopefully, most people would say like, yeah, we all agree. And then those are the content prohibitions. These are the behavior prohibitions. You can't make dishonest declarations. Interfering with content or user interactions. So this is where you can change the code on the ads to some extent. I mean, probably I can't, but there are people out there who can, who are much more technical. They don't want you to manipulate that to the point where you're interfering with the content or the controls of the page. Inventory value. Google served ads on screen without publisher content. That's pretty specific. From a general sense, you probably don't need to worry about that too much from the beginning point. If you're manipulating your ads and doing that, you are miles ahead technically from what we're going to talk about today, but it's out there. Out of context. What does that mean exactly? Appear outside the display. Oh, okay. Out of context, really, out of bounds, and that's another geography of the screen. Last one I thought was interesting was the unsupported languages. It's going to be, I think it would be tough to find an unsupported language. YouTube has over 100 country-specific designations, and there are, I say that, you know, that's, yeah, let me ratchet that right back. I think in places that are very rich linguistically, that probably wouldn't be as hard. What I just showed there was that I'm an American. English is going to be okay, Spanish, French, all the giant languages. I imagine if you produce something in a very small language, it just wouldn't be supported. And that, again, that would make sense. They're trying to hit right the broadest swath. So I think we can understand why they would make that rule. This is, again, we're back to AdSense, and these are the policies that surround their program. Last week, someone asked about creating a whole bunch of different email accounts. Do you remember? There was a little girl here, and she said, "Well, you could make a million fake email accounts, and then you know, just create all those accounts, and suddenly your YouTube numbers would go up." And I said, "Yeah, but you'd get caught. That's a terrible thing. That's a fraudulent thing." Amazon? And every time one of those pay-for-play kind of systems gets exposed, people have reactions, and so they're trying to head that off at the pass here. For one, they don't want to pay you for you seeing your content, and that makes sense. But also, everything from fake Amazon reviews to people who, you know, viciously troll certain avenues of content. They don't want fake accounts. There's a whole section in the AdSense about in the AdSense registration and account creation that you need to prove this is you. They don't. And I think, just thinking about it very briefly, you can see why they wouldn't want fake accounts. They wouldn't want fake impressions. An impression is clicking on and then reacting to that video in some way. That clutters up their business. You know, I know it's a very free platform, but that's still a business. They're making the rules to try and protect their business, right? They have certain traffic sources. They have ad behavior, ad placement. These are all of the, and I have these listed, and I'll send that to you if you want to see those, or if you just go and start clicking on all the links when you look up how to create an AdSense account. Really, that takes you to the upper level of this hierarchy, and you will then be directed down through that. So you can find all these. A lot of this for a beginning YouTube channel, probably way out in the future. If you're basically creating content, concentrate on creating content. These very specific things on how you place your ads because you changed code and you've worked with the API on how you're going to place an advertisement within your video. For beginners, that's probably someone would either have to walk you through that, or you'd have to spend a lot of time learning that skill on your own. For a very basic beginning, we're creating content. Those rules are out there. They probably won't affect you for some time in the future. There is a page about shopping, how to set up all of your, how to set up your store, how to link the store from your website. If you have a brick and mortar store that you have a website for, that you have a YouTube channel to highlight certain products, you can link back to that website and sell your product through your YouTube presence. So, that's helpful. And then, as I've mentioned with everything else, there's a whole other set of rules that go with the shopping experience. What you can sell, what you can't sell, how you can sell. All of those things are covered as you go through the document. I know that's really high level, but basically, create a Gmail account, create a YouTube account, create a YouTube channel, create your AdSense account. Everything that comes after that will be dependent, varies on user experience because it would depend on what you need. The very fine detail of what that is, it's probably a different discussion. Once you get the channel, set up the AdSense account, keep creating content so you get your subscribers, get those 4,000 hours. Then you'll see if you have problems. Because I think it would be really hard to tell. There is something I would like to say though. YouTube does have a human being, that it isn't just an algorithm. They also have a human being who checks to see if your channel meets their guidelines. But they don't check every single video. They check the general theme of your channel, and they might check, one or two that are passing through the boarding gate. Little TSA joke there. Nobody? Okay. But they don't check every single thing. So they are providing some guidelines. They do some checks back on that. A lot of that, when people get in trouble, it's because they are reported by other people who found something. Yes, there are feedback mechanisms within the platform. But also, there is an appeal process. I haven't heard too many people being super successful with it. I worked at a business, and we had a YouTube channel that was tutorials on how to use the products that we built. And then suddenly, they decided that was a problem, and they locked it up. And then what do you do? It's sort of Byzantine, again, to get a hold of someone and find out what the reason was so you could correct it, or if they lock it down, if they lock the administration down, who do you see about that? There's some questions around it, but I just want to there is an algorithmic part, and that's beyond our control, right? Somebody wrote that, and that's just how it's going to interpret that data. But there's a human who's reviewing your content and your channel to make sure it stays within guidelines. Some of them are, oh yeah. That's the thing. Those users then get sanctioned in some ways.
Not too hard, they keep putting them on there.
Right. But sometimes that same individual will be a different username, and
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. It'd be hard to, like so many platforms, how do you keep somebody off YouTube? How do you keep somebody off Twitter? How do you keep somebody off any of those? If you go through a VPN or something where it's not registered in your own computer's IP address. There's a lot of things you could do to get around that, but I hear you, now, if you get an Audible account, those audiobooks, at the beginning of a lot of those titles now, they have a thing that you have agreed not to share this book. And then you go to YouTube and you look up Audible, and there are 9 gazillion of those things out there that they're up there for a week or whatever, and then they get booted, and maybe that user gets shut down, maybe not. Say again?
If you have to have so many users under your day,
So many subscribers?
you couldn't be making a whole lot of money. I don't think people are doing it.
Yeah, I don't see those. Yeah, I don't know how those are making money. I would. Until they discover that it's a copyright infringement. That's the thing. Any of those intellectual property infringements are going to get you booted or demonetized. Get the video booted or get, like in longer works that have a piece that is copyright protected. It's true. If it's a Google ad, yeah, Google ads could just be to Google money over on the side. Yeah. Always, right? Always. That's a good point, though. But they do try to protect intellectual property as much as possible. And again, I think if you examine that through the lens of a businessman, that's a good idea because he doesn't want to set that up to get sued. He doesn't want his business getting sued. One of us being irresponsible with, putting Star Wars in its entirety out there.
How were they closed down for businesses?
I'm not sure. They locked it down. I'm not sure how that happened. Thankfully, that wasn't my primary gig, but yeah, it was a shocking morning, I'll tell you, because there's a lot of content out there, and then suddenly it was locked away from our control. Yeah. Small business, though, sometimes that is hard to have the resources necessary. Yeah. Yeah.
But what about comments and how you can control people?
You can, there are whole sections of videos that don't allow comments just because you don't want people to trash you. You can block people. You can do a lot of things. Troll's going to troll, so it's going to be tough to lock that all down.
That's getting channels in trouble are the comments people are posting, and a lot of the YouTubers have come on and said we can't go back and monitor 5 years of videos and stuff. So they're shutting them down because of some comment somebody made?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's another tactic in the whole troll community is just to make it untenable for people to continue on things that whomever, it's kind of a secret attack. Yeah, yeah. So, that's kind of in a broad sense what you need to do. Again, it's pretty simple. Each piece of this is really simple. Create that account, create this account, create a channel, create that account, make all kinds of amazing content, blow some people's minds. A year later, you've got 1,000 and 4,000, and then YouTube money. What about YouTube money? So I wanted to throw 3 of my favorites out here. Yeah. It's less than it used to be. But I want to show you this channel. I may have talked to you guys about this last time. Primitive Technology. Do you remember me saying something about that? This guy goes out in the woods. He starts with a stick and a rock, makes an axe, then he builds a kiln, gets a whole bunch of clay, and he ends up with, for instance, a mud hut with a tile roof. How often do you think that's been seen?
I've seen this.
10 million? 80, almost 87 million times people have watched this guy who on his weekends went out to the forest in Australia, started with a rock and built this hut. So how much is an 87 million viewed video watched? Well, that depends. But how much money does that guy make in a year before taxes? And here's the thing. He's saying government taxes is 25%. That guy's Australian. It's way more than 25%, right? His annual income, $1.08 million, right? And here's where I said you might have a moment of gasping. YouTube takes 45% of that. They take almost 50% of the revenue that comes to your channel. Almost half.
That's ad revenue, right?
That's your ad revenue. The other kind of stuff, exactly. The other kind of stuff is your stuff. But just from the YouTube, just from the ad rental, what the video itself is worth, $450,000 roughly a year. And it's not bad for him. It took him a lot of weekends because he had a full-time job, but it's still not bad for a mud hut in the woods. And then they said 25%, but whatever. So $500,000 off a video channel that had, how many total subscribers that channel have? 10.7 million subscribers. And that video, that's his most popular video, is that hut. But his videos have many millions of views. Let's see, the popular ones. 86 for the hut, 78 for, he made one of those pump drills that very primitively drill holes through stone or wood. 72 for his bow and arrow. If you get a chance, it's kind of cool. He makes a bow and arrow, and then he practices with it until he can hit like 9 out of 10 times. When he makes a sling, same thing. He weaved the cord to make the ropes, found the, wove a pouch out of vegetable fiber, get stones, and then he practices with it, and he shows you his progression from, again, basically starting with a rock till I can hit something 50 yards away 9 out of 10 times.
Well, I think it's interesting to see because a lot of this is 7 years, but when you start taking a look, it was like this 3 weeks ago, he still almost has 2 million views.
Right. And that's a really good point because if we're talking about income, that video has been out there for 7 years. Just because it's old, people still watch it. He's still getting, residual revenue even now from something he did 7 years ago. Right. That is true. And let's take our next example. Oh. Probably. Also, I wanted to show, that show is so mellow. He doesn't talk. All there is the sounds of nature in the background or the sound of him chopping. He doesn't narrate. There's no music. That could be a green screen on a stage. It could be. Duplicitous. Basically puts up a camera. Chops stuff down with a rock. I'm still just amazed by that. When I can't sleep at night, I'm sure we all have those days. It's just relaxing. It's just a guy in the woods learning how. There's a video on here where he takes, you guys ever heard of bog iron? Vikings were big on it. You let water stagnate and there are little microbes in there and they turn stuff orange. Have you ever seen like a puddle with orange algae in there? That's metabolizing iron. And so then they would gather that up and they would dry it and they would gather that up and they would dry it and then they would get it super hot and little tiny chunks of iron would form out of it. So this guy dams off part of the creek that he is near and creates conditions, and then he harvests that orange algae, and it looks like he harvested a lot. And then he dries it down, and then, fires it up in a forge, and he made a knife out of essentially water. It's kind of cool. On the shopping part, see how he puts his link to his book right there on his site. I have mentioned this lady about 1 million times, Mong Chi. Her real name's Emily Kim. When she got her divorce, 2005, 2006, she got addicted to World of Warcraft. And Mong Chi means hammer. And so she took the name of Hammer on World of Warcraft, and she was so addicted to it that her kids finally came to her. I may have mentioned this to you already. I apologize if I repeat myself. Her kids said, "Hey, Mom, you gotta do something else. You're working all day and then World of Warcraft and all night. Let's change that." So she started publishing her recipes and cooking techniques on YouTube. She is now, how many subscribers? 6.11 million subscribers. Okay, it's pretty good. She's seen as an international Korean auntie. Parents feel better about their children going off to college because they know they can depend on Mong Chi to keep their kids fed. She is now so popular with Korean food. She's an American, by the way. She lives in New York City. She has partnered with the agricultural ministry in South Korea, and she's now making money off the government of South Korea, showing the world how to produce and eat Korean food. Probably not all of us are going to have the opportunity to partner with the government of a country, but it is possible. So some of Mong Chi's very popular recipes, 2.7, 2.9, a couple million views. There's a few of them, like this one. The glass noodles is 9.5, and the crunchy Korean fried chicken is 21 million views. So for somebody who averages more in the 3 million view rather than the 87 million, what is she looking at? She's looking at, from YouTube, about $250,000 a year. That's after YouTube's taken its chunk, and this analysis also is looking at the tax implications of what she does. What they don't say is she makes about another $1 million off her cookbooks. I got one. They're amazing. Her photographer is, the food in those cookbooks is, in every cookbook, of course, but it's brilliant. And so she has used this to create a small media empire because she has sold 2 of her cookbooks that were bestsellers, and she has also now produced a Korean language supplement that's about food, which is kind of cool. I think sometimes that's another barrier of entry to cuisines that you're just not familiar with. But she goes through and kind of lets you know how those words interrelate, what the cognates are and stuff within the language, so that if you see this, you know it's that kind of a thing, which I think is pretty neat. So she has a separate channel on just how to speak the language of Korean food. I think that's a good one. About 250K. So she had 6.11 million subscribers. Great. Anywhere from 21 million down views on her videos. About $250,000 a year. And the last one, if you're not familiar with YSAC, You Suck at Cooking, it's a cooking channel. Not really. It's a comedy channel that is disguised as a cooking channel. This guy puts out a video maybe once a month. It's not super consistent, but he is super consistent in being funny. Can you guys see that? He's about 11,000 a month. So after splitting with YouTube, he's talking about 90 grand a year just from the side project, which, he keeps things in the 8 to 10 minute range. And he made a video on how to make ramen that had, it was reasonably popular. He makes videos on how to make ice cream and how to make tacos and just stuff. But mostly what he does is he just tells a lot of jokes, and he has pretty good production values. He's a pretty good videographer. But he he is not really constrained by that single. Sometimes he's pretty serious about look at this food, but most of the time he's like, hear this joke, you know. He'll suggest that if you really want the fresh potatoes, you should go find a potato tree somewhere near your house, and then he'll go out and he will have put potatoes on a tree and he will pick them in his little basket. He's a fun guy. He's doing about 90 a year, and that channel, if we look back at that number of subscribers, about 3 million, so about a little less than half of what Mong Chi has, significantly less than the revenue than she is estimated to be making. But also, he's doing it like once a month for an 8-minute video, so a lot less time involved. When people get more successful at this, there's more and more time that goes into it, obviously, because their editing techniques change and how they video and where they video and all those things change. But pretty basic. If you look at his history, very basic, and he's still built up a base over the last several years to have. I mean, $90,000 is 2.5 times the median income of this country. That's not bad for a guy who's putting out funny cooking videos once a month, right? So those really are the examples. To bring this to a close, one, results may vary. Nobody is going to say, well, you can make $90,000, or, you know, a guy in Australia, I think somebody broke this down, I read it a while ago. Over the time, he has made several $1 million pre-tax on these videos of him taking his hobby and sharing it with us. That is possible. There are 2 billion people out there regularly using this platform. So I know I keep coming back to that number, but you know, 2 billion a month. By the end of this year, they think it'll be around 3 billion. It's actually north of 2 billion, but it's south of 3 billion right now. They're anticipating 3 billion YouTube users by the end of this year. Month. That's about a monthly total. And by the end of this year, we'll have about 4 billion people globally who are regular internet users. So you're talking more than half are using YouTube. If more than half the world's population is using a service, you can make money there. I mean, you may not make crazy money, you may not make yacht money, but you could make a reasonable side hustle money just with these basic things that we have shown. That's my material for today, and I know that wasn't entirely coherent, and I apologize for that, but really I just want to remind you that there are hierarchies of compliance, just like there are in most things that we face in life, but the mechanisms are really easy. Create a Gmail, create a YouTube, create a channel, create AdSense, make lots of amazing content, and then they have to bring your paycheck on a burro. Say again?
How many subscribers do you have?
1,000 subscribers with 4,000 hours of view time in a 12-month period before they'll pay you AdSense.
1,000 subscribers.
But that's for the ad revenue. During that whole time, you can still set up your Patreon account and get people to pay you via Patreon. You could have a subscription service on your channel. You can sell your merch. And there are a lot of people who, besides me, anybody else bought YouTube merch? Okay.
What is it? ME?
Merchandise. It's your merchandising portion of.
Yeah, so if you've got a business, selling merchandise, it's always smart to have some other TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, all those things you need to just be active on all of that. Because that's places to promote, like I do a lot of educational stuff, so I promote my educational things there.
And you have to be doing all these platforms too?
You don't have to be, but if you look at like the more highly placed creators, and certainly in some niche areas, like if you were a fitness influencer, if you were a food blogger, most of those folks have presence across social media. So they'll have a Facebook account, an Instagram account, a Pinterest account, a TikTok account. They will.
Make separate videos
Absolutely.
Here's your one video and cross-platform that, and you're using different tags and different things like that as you're trying to do that. Or, like on Instagram, it's a lot more about pictures, some short videos and things like that.
Same thing with TikTok, short video, short content.
Short
And some people who are specializing in short content, they're doing TikTok videos and they're putting the same video on YouTube. They don't have to create unique content for each platform. It's just that they have, YouTube's the big one. More people use that than any of the rest of them. It's the second most used social network as well after Facebook. But
So is Facebook good and then YouTube?
you can put your videos in Facebook. You can put your Facebook videos in YouTube. You can live stream. When you live stream on YouTube, you can also put that on Facebook. So there's ways you can connect those things together to maximize your audience.
To me, it seems like, especially with gardening, good stuff on Instagram, my garden to watch the video that day.
Absolutely. Pinterest is a big one as well.
They do a teaser to say, this is, watch this today.
Absolutely. They even there are videos on YouTube that tell you how to optimize the thumbnail picture that you take. That is the the little picture on YouTube. And then there are people who say, well, I posted that on Instagram. I posted that picture on Facebook. I posted that on Pinterest. Then you see that same thing on YouTube. And it's just kind of a horizontal marketing for your channel to get that influence out there.
And it's also, for a lot of it's different than trying to rise up in search. And so the more content and original content that you create, you're going to rise up in search organically above the paid search types things. So if you're trying to sell product or you're trying to do things like that, you know, it's higher search and content is one of the biggest.
Absolutely. And new content. So there's search engine optimization, SEO, and that's how to improve when there's a search where you fall in the list of returned results. The more places that your name falls, and I think that really explains kind of that horizontal approach, because you're going to be on these different platforms. You're going to have all those hits. That same piece of content is now going to have a hit on Facebook, and when you do the search for it. But generally, that's how we'd make money off our YouTube channel: ads, merch, subscriptions, Patreon. I'm really only familiar with Patreon. There's a couple other similar. Are you familiar with Patreon? If you're not familiar with it, what it is, it's a subscription service where if you like someone's content, you can send them $5 a month to help defray the cost of production. I used to watch this channel called The Great War, and it started on August 4th, 2014, and it delivered a sliver of what happened during World War I for that week 100 years previously. They had amazing content, and they went to different museums in England and France and Germany and even in Eastern Europe. And then they had a Patreon account because it turns out producing that kind of content's expensive. But it was really worth it. So if you get a chance, The Great War, the guy who narrates it is amazing, and it goes through one show a week from 2014 to 2018, and then it ended, and then they continued with a slightly different focus on all of the things. Because the Great War really didn't end when the Great War ended. They kept fighting all across Eastern Europe and throughout Africa and Asia and different things. But Patreon was a way for them to finance that. And there are folks you will see who have more, trying to find a term, let's diplomatic say controversial content. They know they're not going to get ad revenue. That's not a non-starter. So they are particularly looking for revenue generating ideas. And so there are Patreon accounts for things that maybe won't subscribe to the rest of those rules. So even if you do want to do something controversial and you just want to take everything we talked about and chuck it out the window, you can still make money. You can still put your t-shirts on your, sell your t-shirts through your YouTube videos and get a Patreon account. If you get people who are interested in what you're doing, you can still make money doing it. Just wouldn't be able to use the tools that Google and YouTube provide for you to do advertising. I mean, you could. You probably just will never have videos that were monetized if it was super controversial. But there's a lot of people who like super controversial stuff who will pay for that, right? Through Patreon or one of those other services. Say again? They do. They live on that drama, just a constant diet of it. Yeah, I'm exhausted. Yeah, which is, right? It's enough. Enough is enough. So, we have a few minutes. What would you guys like to talk about in these, our closing moments? So, I do, I think. I have a Mac, so it has all that in there. Pardon? I have a MacBook. And Windows, there's a whole separate ones. You might want to go back to the CFI, the Center for Innovation. One of the things we talked about last time is the resources that are available in the community to help produce your YouTube content. They have an editing room over there that has a big editing machine with all the software on it. So that might be a helper. I am not sophisticated enough to tell you because mostly I did stuff on my Mac.